Hello, YouTubers. You lucky people today.
You said that the last couple of videos.
You
He
have-
thinks you're lucky because you're watching us.
You have reached Fred and John Talks, and I am John, and this is
Fred, hello.
Boom.
Oh, yes, boom.
Boom.
Boom, 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 boom.
We are excited that you're with us today.
Oh, I was watching, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For about the 15th time, I was watching the movie When Harry Met Sally the other night. And there's this scene where, that's a classic movie.
Absolutely.
One classic scene after another. Well, he's saying to Meg Ryan about how when you go out for a date with a woman, you take her out to dinner, you might go dancing, and he says, you do the old man's overbite.
That would be Fred is an old man. I haven't joined that club yet. Well, today, Fred, is kind of inspired by last Sunday. Our minister at Braddock Street Methodist Church gave a really powerful sermon, and I thought when you and I were kicking this around earlier today that we name it the source, and we will get into that and explain what we mean by the source, because to me that has a lot of meaning. The source is going to be our battery pack. It's a renewable source of energy, and to me that is your faith, your religion, whether you are Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist,
or whatever you substitute for religion. Some people's source is their physical exercise at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Some people's source is their social contacts, but they don't subscribe to a spiritual life. But everybody needs a source of energy and enthusiasm and things that help them get out of bed in the day, and
you've got to have something to plug into.
Get the fires burning, right?
Yeah, you've got to plug in. You've got to plug in to get going.
Yeah, we just happen to come from a faith perspective. So I was saying to John when we were discussing the topic before, this is Alcoholics Anonymous par excellence,
Yes.
One of the steps is that they realized that their lives had become unmanageable, and
Yes.
and there was a higher power that they need to plug into as their source,
And that helps manage loneliness, even connections that you have through your community, your faith community. A faith almost always means a community of people, and so you have automatic connections, and that's something that we talk about all the time. It's one of the reasons why we started the whole YouTube channel for people, is to help them find a way to deal with their loneliness, and by connecting and fostering connections.
Can I mention a book that I read years ago?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Guess what it's called? The Source.
So, no. Did you steal my name?
Did I steal your idea? No, I didn't. The Source is a fabulous book. To illustrate the point, after I read it, I loaned it to one of my buddies who is a college professor at a community college. He teaches philosophy, religion, and everything. And he read it twice. And one day I'm going to read it again too. It's worth a second read. The Source is a book it takes place over centuries.
Oh boy.
And it starts, now it's a mix of history and fiction. So historical fiction. And it tells the story about this one locale over in Israel. And over the centuries, as things do, times past end up getting covered over by layers of new land and everything.
So things become ruined and rebuilt.
Yes,
ruined and rebuilt.
I remember living in Rome, Italy, and if you were paying attention, and I paid attention, everywhere I went in town, I could be standing at a bus stop waiting for a bus to come, and there's a railing right behind me And I looked down below, and archaeologists had, done work there, and there was a room of a house that existed, 500 years ago. So anyway, I digress. The source is about this one locale, and they trace it back to its beginnings by archaeology,
Yeah.
and they recreate through the study and the science of archaeology the way that life was in these different eras. And it is just, I read a lot of novels, and that book captivated me from the first page like a great novel would. So it's called The Source. I can't remember the name of the author.
But you recommend it.
I recommend it, yeah.
Well, it sounds like, to me, Fred, it's something that would be right along the lines of what we're talking about. The other thing I think that I love about The Source and having faith is that it is all about life. It's about a positive force that helps reinvigorate you and keep you on the right path in your lifetime, and your life behaviors even. And I want to bring up to you that my wife and I think that your source and your faith has been a great battery pack for you to plug into over time. I mean, I think Fred's been in seminary in his earlier life. Now he's a counselor. But from what I have seen, my wife has seen of Fred, he has been able to cope and deal with life like all of us have to. But his source and faith has continued to renew him and revitalize him.
I appreciate that very much, John. And this can be a source of pride, but I don't speak about it from that perspective. I speak about it from the perspective of gratitude.
Yes.
I've said this in a previous video, but that was a long time ago in one of our early videos. I am so grateful that I grew up in a household where my parents modeled faithful Christianity, Catholic Christianity. I'm grateful that I watched my mother, I observed my mother reading her Bible most days, and I was very drawn to it from a young age. And I was very drawn to the spiritual life, to a life of prayer from a very young age. I've been reading and studying the Bible since I was 12 years old, and I'm 68 now, so that's, 56 years.
That's a lot of verses.
Is that 56 years? Something like that. Yeah, that's a lot of verses. And so my source for the vast majority of my life has been a practice of daily prayer. And I like to use the analogy of, and I wrote it down here, praying once in a while is better than not praying at all. But praying regularly is optimal. And I use the analogy of getting nutrition for your physical body. I know it's absurdist to say, but you don't eat breakfast today and then maybe no other meals throughout the day, and then tomorrow morning skip breakfast. You're going to be hungry and you need to feed yourself again. And that's analogous to prayer. Not only a formal time of prayer or meditation in the morning, but talking to God throughout the day. St. Paul said, pray unceasingly. So I just want to share this. So I call my morning prayer time my spiritual breakfast.
I like that.
And it's best practiced daily, like I say. You like that?
I like that. I like that.
So daily nourishment for both body in the form of eating, exercise, and other things, and nourishment for the soul. And I want to tell one brief anecdote, and then I am going to hand it back to John because he's got most of the good ideas for today's episode, so I don't want to monopolize. But I read this many years ago. So there was a, quote, visitor from the East. It's reminiscent of the Magi, the three
bringing gifts.
Yeah, the three wise men from the east following the star, to follow the newborn king Jesus, the child Jesus. Well, this story was a modern story about a visitor from the east, one man who visited a large American city, and his host, very, very generously, I'm not knocking it, took him on a whirlwind tour that I would call the tour of extroversion. Parties, entertainment events, meeting all kinds of different people, sightseeing around the city. By the end of the day, this visitor was completely exhausted, and he turned to his host and he said, "I have one question. What hour of the day do you devote to the soul?"
Did he have an answer?
No.
No. Yeah.
The implication being, when do you spend some time in quiet meditation and prayer and reflection? He couldn't imagine a life without that, and he said, I really enjoyed my stay, but I could never keep running with this amount of energy without going back to my source. And with that, I hand it back to you.
Yes. Well, by the way, Fred, you're saying that if somebody doesn't have time to plug into their source and their battery, they're going to run out of energy.
They're going to be on the side of the highway with an empty tank of gas.
Empty tank of gas, flat tires. Now, the thing is, too, you can't have breakfast and your message of being, praying and everything unless you spend time at it. I would suggest this in the morning. Rather than drinking your coffee to charge yourself, why not take time to do what Fred is suggesting, is meditate, sit quietly without the caffeine, pray, read the Bible, think about your family, think positive thoughts, think about things that you're going to do throughout the day. Start the day with a mellowing out before you caffeinate and add electric charge.
Then have your coffee.
Then have your coffee. And here's another little medical tip about that, Fred, is that whenever we wake up in the morning, do you know that we're actually dehydrated in the morning?
Yeah.
Because you've been making urine overnight.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things you have to do before drinking coffee is go to the bathroom and pee. So here's the deal, before caffeine and everything else, your body is speaking to you. So hydrate it.
Yeah.
I used to tell my patients, especially pregnant patients, drink water first thing in the morning. Get hydrated. 1 or 2 glasses of water before you even make the coffee or make the tea, so that you will have more circulation and be able to deal with exercise and activity. So that's a little
very interesting
little medical tip.
Boy, does that go against the grain of American, and I'm sure other countries where the first thing we do is put our pot of coffee on.
Hey, and we've got some really terrific Turkish friends who make delicious Turkish coffee, and I've got to talk with them about, do they drink water?
That's all I drink anymore, Turkish coffee.
Do they drink water first thing in the morning, or do they make Turkish coffee? We'll have to sort that out when they get back from Turkey.
When they get back from Turkey.
So I think Fred and I believe that if you have a source, you have a faith, you have something that you devote a higher power belief to, it's going to bring you joy in your life. It's going to bring you love in your life, and that's different, Fred, than happiness. The research I've done about happiness seems to indicate that it's more of a trivial, fleeting kind of emotional state. It may depend on the weather. It may depend on whether it rains. Maybe you're happy if you're on snow skis and you're on snow, but you're going to come down and sit down and get off your skis at some point, and the happiness may stop. So happiness is really very fleeting kind of emotional status, whereas joy, which you get from the source internally, is below the waves and the storms. When you can't go out to sea because of the waves, you may be unhappy, but if you have joy, and depth in your soul.
I was just going to say deeper. Oh, you took the word right out of my mouth.
Deeper.
Depth. Yeah.
The other thing I think that's relevant, Fred, is that all of us have bad habits, a certain degree of bad habits, and bad habits can rob your joy. You may feel happy or a sense of happiness when you have your bad habit, or while you're doing your bad habit. You may think that's the way to happiness, and you'll find out it's not. Joy is different from that. Joy is there all the time if you can control it, and you have to keep it. You have to guard it.
And joy is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
But I want to tell a funny anecdote. Maybe this. You have your notes, so it won't break your momentum.
Yeah, that's right.
I love telling the story about, the dog who believed that happiness resided in his tail. So guess what he did all day? He chased his tail and went around in circles. And he never found happiness because all he found was dizziness.
Have you seen people in your counseling career do that, Fred?
Oh, gosh.
Going around in circles?
I've done it myself. So, but then what he found was when he finally gave up the ghost and went about his business, he found, oh my goodness, happiness followed him. Now, we are talking about happiness in terms of a fleeting thing.
Yes.
Maybe we could substitute, he thought joy resided in his tail. At any rate, you get the point. When you're spinning your wheels just chasing after happiness. As a matter of fact, I'll throw something in there about Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian guy who spent the time in the Russian Gulag. He wrote books about the horrific conditions and stuff. He didn't think very highly of the American notion that was included in our I forget which document, but the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Oh.
He didn't care for the pursuit of happiness. He thought that was I want to be kind about this.
Superficial?
Thank you.
Yeah.
He thought that was a superficial thing.
Yeah.
So I think John and I would be advocating today tapping into the source of joy. For us, that's God.
And it will help keep you connected. Well, to finish here, Fred, there's a Bible verse that is really very meaningful to me. It's Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And we'll finish with this and kind of discuss it. Chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Those are really super words. They're powerful words, and it's a
That's like a poem.
It's a positive,
non-rhyming poem.
It's a positive way to keep renewing your energy by thinking about praising things that are good and not be going into negative thoughts. And the source will keep you connected to good things, to love, to life, and to good friendships.
Yes. And from the point of a mental health therapist, namely myself, it's, I think, a human tendency, an unfortunate one, to focus on our thoughts on the negatives, on the worries.
Yes.
I was working with a client just last night, a couple, and the guy made a comment about, because they're separated right now and trying to work toward reunification, and he's asking his wife for answers now about, he says, you know me, I'm a planner. I want to know what's going to happen 3 and 4 years down the road. Mm-hmm. And she just couldn't give those answers. And it's interesting because, go back to AA, which both of them are very familiar with. They advocate what? One day at a time. Now, I'm not criticizing people I mean, I do this myself. I wonder where I'm going to be in a couple of years, having been divorced 8 years, and am I still going to have to live, this life that has so much loneliness? But to dwell on that and to ask your partner with whom you're separated from, tell me what's going to happen 4 years down the road and help me plan my life. No, that's not the way to go.
Hey, Fred, when I delivered babies, and I delivered thousands of babies, it always impressed me as to how much joy there was in people's soul, in their hearts. You could see the love and the joy in their hearts when they caress the baby and hold the baby. First time the baby is feeding, that connection with the breast with the mother, sometimes even bottle feeding, but breastfeeding is even a stronger connection. And that's something that day to day you go with, and it's hard to plan the next day. Even sometimes with an infant, hard to plan the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode of YouTube. We're going to call it The Source, and I think it's a powerful name for you to keep thinking about. Fred recommended a book called The Source, which I've not yet read. Anything else you want to add, Fred?
I think that's a good wrap. We just want to encourage everyone to improve your quality of life. It is within your grasp. No one's going to do it for you. In mental health counseling, we acknowledge that we all have an inner critic, and you've got to have weapons to come against that. And I can't think of a better way than what the verse that John just read, that you distract yourself from the automatic negative thoughts of that are endemic to human nature, and dwell on things like, I don't know if beauty was included in there, but if it wasn't, that's a word I'd like to inject. Focus on things that are beautiful in your life, things you're grateful for. The old saying, count your blessings. Tap into a source, whatever works for you. But again, we come down solidly on the side that there's no greater source than a loving Heavenly Father, who is a very personal God and doesn't just stand apart looking at us suffer and twist ourselves in the wind and not care. If you tap into that source, as I was blessed to do because of my mother's example, it will be a lifeline for the rest of your days.
Good ending, Fred.
Okay.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Let's do a handshake for connection.